Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you all again. It's great to have a big crew here this Friday, and welcome to our July Vibe Tribe. Before we kick off, actually, for what today has in store, I always like to give a preview of what is coming up for us. We only have two Vibe Tribes after this, so I'm going to drop the link in chat. This is kind of our hub spot for all of the content we've had so far this year and what's coming up next. And just a quick note, we do actually skip August. We figure people are going to be out on vacations and busy. So we'll reconvene back in September. And then we have one more after that in October as well. So you can see the schedule and that link in the chat. And also, you can check out old recordings as well. So we record a portion of all of these calls, and often we'll edit out anything that is private or confidential to keep the space really safe to have real questions asked, honest answers given, right? So part of this is we want the discussion, especially for today. We want to hear what you're learning and discovering in this world of team coaching. We know that it's evolving, and we truly are interested in hearing your take on what you're seeing in your organizations. So with that, we have a great panel. DJ is going to help facilitate this one. So DJ, I'll pass it to you to just kind of open up the
Yeah,
space. Yeah.
thanks. So I am just being engaged to do one of the first big initiatives around the team advantage and the team coaching process in the hospital system coming up this fall. And so I will tell you that we've done this work over the years, as most of you know, because you've been in our classes and you hear that. And I teach this around the world with Barry and with Denise. Denise is one of my go-to folks for co-delivering this process. And what we're learning is that healthcare systems are very different than some of the other clients that we've worked with, whether it was biotech or whether it's been a lot of pharmaceutical work over the years or professional sports. We've been in a lot of different channels of business, but this one presents some unique fabrics for us to kind of weave together, if you will. And so, what we'd love to do is begin to explore with you all what makes sense, what you need in team coaching, how we can support you all to continue to build that out as one of your offers in your systems. And so, that's what we're doing today. So, I'm going to bring Barry online. You all know him as my business partner and spouse, and he's my travel buddy. Right now, we're getting ready to celebrate one of his big birthdays by going to Alaska next Friday for 2 weeks. He's going to be out there fishing for a week, and I'm going to come home and go to a spa. But the first part of it's going to be really exciting, and I can't wait. He's planned a great vacation. But Barry, a little bit about our background together and the teamwork and the team coaching and why you got engaged in it. Tell them a little bit of your story, and then I'll go to Denise's introduction.
Well, it came about from the extraordinary game, which DJ created on the very early days of our coaching business. It evolved into Team Advantage, and we've been doing that program for, the industries were telecommunications, pharmaceuticals, government, health and fitness, the beverage industry, training and development. And within those industries, it's been a lot of sales teams, it's been management teams, it's been ad hoc teams, where somebody says we're going to put together an engagement committee. Let's put together, you work as a team for 6 months and see if you can come up with some ideas for us with engagement. We've worked with operations centers, we work with call centers, but we have not really delved into the healthcare arena. So what we like to talk about today is what makes it different and what can we learn from you and your experiences. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where we're coming from.
Yeah, thanks, Bear. Yeah, so a lot of different industry. This one's really late adapting when it comes to the team piece, and there are a lot of reasons for that. We want to hear from you about that. But before that, Dennece McKelvy has been trained in our programs for a long time. So one of the first people certified in Team Advantage after we changed the name from the Extraordinary Game many years ago due to publishing the materials. But Dennece, anything you want to say about what you're looking to experience or explore today?
Well, I'm actually excited. I think the stakes for healthcare are incredibly high. And from my perspective, being in industries across the gamut, really, the teams coming together are all people, right? And what I see is that when cross-functional teams work well together, it's not just the business that thrives, but in healthcare system, it affects the patient experience. It affects our communities. It affects caregivers. It affects across our humanity, right? And so I'm excited to hear people's experiences and what they would like to know and what could help them possibly get team coaching started in their place of work.
Wonderful. Great. So we seeded some questions for you for today. And the first one, Barry, if you want to just, you don't have to pull it up. We can just put this out there. What makes coaching a healthcare system, a healthcare team? And I'm going to say leadership, a group of physicians, clinicians, a well-being team. Think through your organization. What makes that fundamentally different than coaching the executives, or group coaching or any of the other things that you put on a coaching platform in your system? So let's hear from you. Who has an idea about what makes it fundamentally different? You can put that down there. And if you don't know yet, just, put out here, I don't know, but this is what I think we need. Okay, Janet, what do you think? Janet Schlaze.
Well, being so grateful to no longer be doing that anymore. Wisdom that I've gleaned from working with interprofessional teams in the healthcare field is one of the challenges, I think a major challenge is hierarchy or perception of hierarchy. Every single member of the team is essential, especially the people who clean and sanitize surgery rooms. That what I've experienced in working with different people is the hierarchy, the perception of my work is important and it's not really valued by the other. And that works, all across the interprofessional teams. Communication under extreme stress, especially in surgery, and the importance of what I call or have referred to it as, okay, in the moment, when you're saving a life, so to speak, it's not about niceties, it's about demands in the moment, but the importance of cleaning it up afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
That, the relationship is really important afterwards. So I think that's really important. Communication skills. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm one of these irritating people who have actually said to my eye surgeon, you really need to work on your communication skills.
Yeah, and it's something that I think, so I'll segue out of that. There's something to that, what the patient experience is like, and we're all patients, right? We're all patients in addition to the other work we do. And it's easy for us when we have this lens of coaching to want to have people around us treat us with coaching skills, and they don't. So the communication skill piece, I think, is a critical piece. I'm glad you brought that online. And
but it's not from a place of, this is the eternal optimist in me. I don't think it's from a place of I don't value you or
right.
You're not important. I think it really is from a place of I was not taught this in med school.
Right.
And I don't know how to do this.
Yeah. No, I love that. And one of the physicians who's just graduated from the program is calling what he's doing around that coaching in the arena. And so it's going to be interesting to see how many different programs get created out of particularly this last cohort and some of the things that we see come online. Brad, how about you? You have a question or an idea about what makes it different?
Yeah, first, just to say hello to my friends. I don't want to name everybody, but it's great to see everybody for sure. I feel, Barry, those pictures in the background, I hope one of them is Alaska, to say
Not
the
yet.
least. My brother started going to Alaska on a trip fishing about 20 years ago and goes every single year. He thinks it's the greatest experience of his life. So hope you have the same experience.
All right.
But that's not what I raised my hand for. Sorry.
You know, Brad, we expect nothing less than for you to create community. So, all right. So
Thank you,
what's
DJ.
your idea? What's your
So I
idea?
promised I was going to be the first one to raise my hand, but of course I, jumped at this. I feel if there's any area that I'm a subject matter expert, it's this.
Good.
And I would say a few different things come to mind. First is, when you're talking about coaching within healthcare, it's vast and it can go in different directions. The first bang for the buck best ROI that I think you can accomplish is looking at executive teams, senior leadership teams, and how they're functioning together and what their outcome and looking to achieve. So my hospital has a culture where our senior team works exceedingly well together, and it's been recognized by a lot of our regulatory agencies that have come in around the culture we created as being a high functioning team, an organization, but that translates and permeates to the rest of the hospital in itself. So
Of
I
course it
feel
does.
depending upon who your audience is, that's one that you can see a real ROI on. By having a high functioning executive team. And that is in most circumstances not the case. For some of
Right.
the reasons that Janet had talked about or other reasons, probably not different from other organizations that you already work with. But I feel that's one where you can really have a large impact on.
Good. And so the executive team has some buy-in and coaching. They call this team coaching at the executive level in your space, or is there something else that they call it?
Yeah, so uh great question. I would say team building, relationship building, coaching in that context, people may react differently in an executive format
Yeah.
to what they're looking to accomplish. But I mean, it's really about how to work together. You know, uh, I mean, it is coaching, but it's about relationship and relationship building in itself.
Yes. Yeah, and so one of the distinctions then, Brad, and I'll kind of use this as a segue to see what Bryant wants to put in the space, but is the difference, the distinction between the team building, team facilitation dialogue and getting into who people are and the team coaching and how to create a platform for that in a space where we're always still negotiating position and power, right?
Yeah,
There's always a
yeah,
negotiation in an executive leadership team around position and power. And so there's the honoring of that and what we do in team coaching, but there's also the bigger question of, can we create the safety and the platform for folks to really get into a rhythm where we level the playing field, where everybody's learning and growing, and there's as much excitement about the learning and growing as there is about the attainments, right?
yeah. I would say just comment to that is look at what your ROI is going to be for that team,
Yeah,
right? If it's increasing hospital ratings, improving culture, whatever that may be,
yeah,
patient experience, right? Look at that and then build around that in terms of getting the
beautiful.
buy-in in itself, right?
Yeah,
Well, the rest of
excellent.
that will follow.
I love it. Love it. Very helpful. Thank you. Yeah. And always tracking back to what is the intended outcome. Love that. Bryant, Dr. Murphy, it's good to see you. I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, likewise. Like Barry said, good to see some of my old friends. But to the point about what makes healthcare different, it's just that it's just such a unique environment. And so when you are in there, just having the ability to understand how different it is. I mean, there's external pressures, there's internal pressures, there's, just that overall uncertainty that is in the profession, and then just the knowledge that you're really working with people who deal with life and death, true life and death kind of
Yeah.
situations, and all the impact that has. And
Yeah.
so it's just a very unique area. And so when you talk about the team coaching, the individual coaching, obviously we have the skills to do that, but there's that other layer that you have to be cognizant of, that you really have to use those coaching skills to really dive in. Because I think that even more so than some of our regular coaching where, there's a story and then there's the other stuff, I think there's another layer that you really have to be aware of. And so it's just unique. And there's not a lot of industries that's like healthcare when it comes to those things.
Yeah. And I think the life and death piece of it is something that we don't step over, right? That's always central
Hmm.
to what what we're doing when we bring coaching in, whether it's group coaching, individual coaching, or whatever. It's always the focal point at the end of the day. And so that changes, or I think reshapes some of the stuff that we bring to the table as we do team coaching. And Barry, you've got your hand up. Let me go to you. And well, Janet, I'll come back to you. I want to hear from Barry and from Dennece about this. Yeah.
Brad, you raised a question to me. I'm thinking logistics. Just logistically thinking, how do you coach a team? We're used to having teams that they come together physically or on a phone or on a Zoom call, and I can see it with senior leadership teams in healthcare. But at what level is it logistically possible? And I'm thinking of Brian, who being an anesthesiologist, you're part of the clinical team, right, Brian? But is it logistically even possible to bring to do that, to put together a team coaching initiative? What level within an organization would it work, and what level would it be almost hard to do?
Yes, great question, Bear. So I would say, to me, it's hard on every level, but you have if you're dealing with administrative teams, there's already time set aside on that responsibility.
Right.
It's not like you have to go into the OR as an anesthesiologist and your time is locked in itself. So that's why I said, in dealing with more higher level executives, there probably is a little bit more leeway, as though you think it's counterintuitive because they think perception would be they're busier, right? But I think you may have more flexibility than you will in more front level teams in itself, where you're dealing with care providers. If that helps.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Yeah. At where you've kind of answered the question of where you think the biggest impact would be. You mentioned that in your.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased in that, right? Being in that on that level, but I feel if that team functions well, there's implications around the rest of the hospital, et cetera, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we typically start with a pilot, and the pilot is becoming more often the executive team in any level organization. But Dennece, you're doing a lot of work with us in this space. So what are you seeing out of this conversation so far that gives way to a different question or your input?
Well, I love that we're talking about the leadership team. Brad's brought up the leadership team. I think Janet was talking more about the operations side of what's going on there. And my experience has been exactly that the leadership team is looking for the operations teams to fix it. And what I'm hearing from Brad is, well, it has to start with the leadership team, and that's very similar in most industries, as DJ said. So it's really helping the executive leadership team see that they have to do things differently in order to help solve the problems in the operations. So, what comes up for me is we talk about communications and how we do team coaching in hospital systems. But what I'm finding is teams need to take ownership and take ownership of what's happening for them cross-functionally, but also taking ownership in the in-game, right? So what strikes me is who owns the entire patient journey in healthcare systems, and how might that be an approach to helping teams, whether they're executive teams or operational teams?
I think it's a great question, and I'm interested to see maybe who has an idea about who owns the entire patient journey. Is it an operational position? Is it well-being? Who owns the whole?
I can comment, but I think Janet's patiently waiting, so maybe.
Yeah, well, I'll come to Janet. Janet, heard from Janet. I want to hear from a couple more people. I'm coming back to Janet. She knows I will. Sharon, you had an idea, yeah?
When you talked about who owns the entire patient journey, I wonder, is that the question that the executive team asks, or are they more concerned about a different outcome?
They're more concerned. Yeah, what I'm sensing with some of the individual coaching I'm doing, where there's becoming a tributary into the team coaching, is that there is a disconnect. The executive teams want to sponsor the work. They don't want to be in the work.
Yeah, and I think the question I'm asking,
Yeah.
and I know I interrupt, is I hear it's from, it's about the patient, but I wonder what it's really about. What's the outcome most they're really most interested in?
My sense is you have an idea about that. It has to do with profitability or finances. What does it have to do with in your mind?
I think money, and I also think ratings, and there are probably some other things there too. But I think it's um the political answer to say it's it's about the patient. You're the most important thing in this healthcare system. But I just question if that's really the truth.
Well, one of the things that I said kind of accidentally on something that Tasha and I did for the hospice organization this week in an interview is that there are always two conversations going on. There's the one that's outward facing that we have on the surface, and then there's the one that people are not having out loud. But it is the most important one because it is in the energy and the current that carries all of the emotions, all of the stuff of life that's happening below that conversation. So the two conversations, the energetic conversation is the one that we have the unique ability to pay attention to with team coaching. And and to have that be a in real time learning, teaching experience for the leaders around us, to have them begin to hear the things that are not being said. So that I think would be really good for executives to put their hands on. But this is a critical piece, and I love that you brought it up. It's a distinction we need to play with.
Well, and what I love about that is maybe we're asking the wrong questions to the team that needs to adopt this team coaching process. Maybe we're asking the wrong questions.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear more about that. Denise, I'm going to let you kind of mull that over, and I'll come to Janet and then Michael.
Directly from my recent experience at Rush Medical Center, two main things going on, which I'm going to put under the meta of culture. And up there too is psychological safety.
Yeah.
So one of the things that is being experienced in the healthcare field, in particular the academic healthcare field, is what I'm going to call downsizing, but also centralizing operations. And that is a really, really big thing right now, especially as medical centers are expanding with multiple hospitals. And the leaders that I worked with who were experiencing firsthand centralization, how I related it to psychological safety is if you're worried about, will I still have my job next month as a leader, you're not focused on patient care. You're focused on survival.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of culture, is it a culture of thriving? Is it a culture of surviving? Is the stated culture the actual experienced culture? And how does centralization or whatever's going on within any system, and I'm looking at this from an organizational development perspective, if the system and culture is not set up to support psychological safety, then the team leaders and the leaders at the top are not going to be focused on the right stuff.
No.
So
go ahead. It becomes I love what Sharona put in the chat box. It becomes more of a crisis culture. And that becomes a reactive culture, right? So there's all this reactivity to each other, and it's hard to get above that where you need to function with the executive brain, right? I love that. Thank you. We'll see what else there is as you think of things, Janet. And I want to go to you, Michael, and hear what you're exploring here.
Yeah, no, I think Janet hit it like on the nail. I think culture is the biggest component, and I'm coming from an HR lens that, how do we change the culture? And I think from a coaching perspective, yes, the executive team wants to be engaged. They want to be the sponsors, but that's not the layer that's going to impact the patient experience. I think, and what I've seen at Ohio Health is that we've went a click down to that middle manager level, director, senior director groups who really have the influence across the organization to be able to collectively work together as a team to walk through the patient experience. And so I think it's the entry point of where you bring the work into is really critical because you can bring it to the executive team. They're all going to buy in and they need to champion it, but they're not necessarily doing the work. That
Yeah,
second layer is doing the work.
love that. So that's reminding us, come back to you, Barry, and to Dennece, but we have gone in often with a pilot in an organization that starts different than the executive team. The executive team may get a version of what we're doing. They may get into the conversation. So if sponsorship is their goal, we help them understand the language. We put them through some of the exercises, but it's not a full tilt engagement where they're coached around the execution of things. And then we look at a pilot, but at least we have the sponsorship and the conversation at that level. And we come to the pilot. I love the middle managers. And I think, I'm hearing that from the National Center for Healthcare Leadership and some of our other partnerships, that the middle manager is where we've got to start looking. And a couple of reasons for that. One is there are a lot of folks retiring, and the middle managers are next in line. They're being identified, and they haven't been groomed for that next level leadership. So coaching individually is working there, but having them work not only with an executive coach for themselves, but with their new team and have that come online fully and right away could be really exciting for a system and cost a lot less than bringing in, a top name McKinsey or Boston Consulting or some of the folks that we see are going in and coming back out. So yeah, so it's interesting. So I'd like to go to Dennece and Barry on this. What do you hear?
Go ahead, Dennece.
Yeah.
I go back to Barry's question, even at this director level. I know that we, several years back, we went into a hospital system here in Arizona and met with the doctors. They were literally the hospitalists. And there were, about 16 of them that we went in at lunchtime and talked to them at length. And they were very interested in, learning and doing something different together, just as a hospitalist team. However, at the end of the day, there was nothing they could sign up for in terms of meeting an hour here. Well, only a few people can make it. I mean, literally, we could not figure out a schedule that would work for them because they're just so busy. And when they do have time off, they're doing paperwork. And then they got into this big old conversation about how they did the paperwork wrong and insurance didn't pay. And, we kind of lost the team. But yeah, it's interesting to identify even and have the interest, but working out the real logistics of helping a team. Maybe it's easier inside, Michael, being in HR, there may be avenues that you would find, but as an outsider, it's been difficult to understand how we could fit in that type of dynamic for the
I would
team.
even argue a cross-functional team. I agree with you with the hospitalist, but having a team that has maybe some hospitalists, maybe some operational folks that can bring that information back to that group and be kind of the champion for what are the organizational changes we're trying to make. We've seen success in that as we build out new areas to say we're forming this kind of intact team to be able to work on a specific item. You take this information back, bring back your thoughts, and that's how we were able to change the culture.
Nice.
Very nice. And the culture conversation is the conversation. So Barry?
Yeah, I'm churning here, and I'm trying to relate this discussion to other teams we work with, and going back to Brad's thing with the executive team. When we put together in our process, when we put together basically a game plan, everybody who is on that team, what they set out to do, what they agree to do, does permeate to those below them. So you have a senior executive team, and say somebody's on the team who's the VP of housekeeping.
Thanks.
you know,
Bye.
what they decide to do and their goals and so forth. It's going to permeate as you go through that team coaching process. So that's when I asked a question about logistics, and Denise, your answer to that, they couldn't get together because it was just so busy. How do you kind of couple where are the people who can be dedicated to this endeavor and what are their influences on the rest of the system? So, and DJ, I think it might go into our next
Yeah,
question.
let's go
Say
into the
what?
next question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you want to pull that up or I can just ask
Yeah,
it?
I think it's a good segue
Yeah.
to it.
So how might you identify the right team for a team coaching engagement? Or how do you know when a team's needs point to team coaching engagement over the other things? Again, there's always been a platform for team building, team facilitation, executive development for teams, but how do you really know when it's right for team coaching? Because team coaching is going to do a couple of things that are unique, right? It's going to set a platform for agreements. It's going to have the ownership get transferred to the team in a way that has them not only look at what they're going to attain, but how they're going to function together. So we're looking at behaviors. And while some of that can come out in team facilitation, when it's coaching, you're getting permission to actually begin to say what you hear in ways that call out individuals and the collective so that they're reshaping their agreements, they're reshaping their behaviors with each other. And so the coaching has a level and a layer that we don't see with some of the other things. And know that, in our tool bag, we also do those things, the team building and that kind of stuff, but we do everything on a coaching platform. So I think this is a great question. How might you identify the right team for team coaching? Because as we look at how we offer our products to you all so that they're really useful, our programs for you all, it's like, how do we make sure that we give you something that you can get traction around right away? So how do you identify the right team? Jemana, is dinner done? She was
Yeah,
cooking.
I can chime in there if that's okay.
That would be
Um,
great.
okay, so my background is more to do with tech, like I've come from a technology leadership, and I worked with John Hopkins Aramco South in Saudi. So that's the Middle East region, and I see most of you are from a different region. So I'm not sure whether it would directly relate, but as we know, people are everywhere and it's almost the same. So in what I did with the 22 leaders, which is the middle management, which I had done the team coaching as well as, of course, the bracket was leadership development. They didn't call it coaching. I had to bring that term in, and then it kind of made sense. So, coaching questionnaires, which I had passed across, had a certain theme that is resonating across all the 22 leaders. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when, I, instead of doing a one-to-one coaching, I think it calls for a team coaching. I mean, that's a standard answer, but it's usually underestimated. We think a coaching questionnaire for me, it's been the game changer because that's when you understand the language. You see whether there's a risk appetite, you see whether there's a safety for people to open up. Um, the language they use, are they like away from, are they towards? There's a whole lot of linguistics. I also come from an NLP background. So, I mix my consultancy, my technology
Right.
leadership, and my coaching. And coaching is like the tip of the iceberg, the cherry on the top that I kind of take it out only at the end, you see. So
Yeah.
that's how I've done that, and I think that's been the number one way in which we can identify, like basically pattern recognition of what really shouts out. So where does it really benefit from coaching as a team, so that no one person is sidelined and think that it's my problem, that kind of.
Right, 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 right. I love that. Perhaps you would share your questionnaire with attribution back to you.
Sure.
We would love to see that. Anything that gives us a tool for how to discern, when
Right.
it's team coaching versus something else would be really helpful. Thank you.
Well, I just use the starfish model, if you all know what that
Yeah,
is. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah. Starfish.
just
Yeah,
five
yeah,
questions. Yeah,
yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
That's mostly it, but that has a pattern because what everyone says, it's like you'll see that, like we were talking about operations and we were talking about different patient care. So you'll see customer service will say more or less because they're of the same culture, they'll say of the same thing. And then if you go back to maybe an operations team or maybe a strategy team, they might say something totally different. So you'll see sort of like pockets. It comes from everywhere. Then I think it's a wisdom where we put that as a graph together and say, these are the five common themes I see. This is
Yeah.
where the 2D is. This is where the current state is. And you take it on, like. And coaching is one way to handle that. Training is another way. And.
Yeah.
That's how I put it. I mean, that's been my experience with John Hopkins, so that's why I think it kind of worked. I know that's going to work everywhere, but it did good there.
Well, I think we're looking for what works, what works now, and what are we learning together that will take this in? Because, we put a stake in the ground in 2013, just for your information, to work in healthcare specifically with our training for training coaches because it was the latest adapting industry in North America. And it matters to us. The health and well-being matters to us, and we love that space. So, and it's full of smart people that we love to play with. So we've been working specifically in that area, and the team is work has been one of the latest adapting things. So it's good to see. One of the things that I wanted to say a little earlier when Bryant was talking is the academic side of this. While Bryant is on a team where he is a clinician, right, an anesthesiologist, he's also part of an academic team. And that's true for many of you in this room. It's like it's that team that we're talking about sometimes because you come from different places with your practices, but how do we bring that into fuller focus, I think. So, Rebecca, you have any ideas about this?
Sorry, I lost my internet for a moment. So I'm not sure
What we're talking about. The
of
question
the
is,
conversation
yeah, so the arc of the conversation is around how do you identify and engage the right team for team coaches,
Yeah.
coaching versus other things. And yeah.
So I've been quiet because I've realized that this conversation has me very triggered. So I've been trying to be thoughtful about that and just sort of step back and when I heard ROI, I literally can feel like this whole physical response. And I mean no disrespect, but that terminology, I'm not over it. But I've been thinking about where you may have trouble is deciphering where there's truly transformational leadership goals and where that language is being used, and yet all the behaviors are transactional. And so I think that's going to be a key to determine the coachability within this organization. Right. So not for individuals, but for teams that run parallel lives in healthcare systems. You can't but help to have parallel groups that can't be fully integrated because they just don't speak the same languages. They don't fully, they can appreciate each other, but they can't fully experience the same thing. And so there's my concern about the teams. And when you're saying, like, I can think of many teams that I was on that I have now learned that if I'd gone through a team coaching experience with them, that now I know I wouldn't be able to trust that whatever I said in that environment wasn't going to be used against me in the future. So there's just.
That's what I wanted to hear you say is what's triggering you? Because as I'm watching you process, it's obvious that there's something else at play here that would be helpful for us all to know. And that's the piece. It's the trust, right? It's like some of the things that would have been accomplished or revealed, and that team could have.
And there's some people that drink the Kool-Aid and dish it out. Yeah. And though I think it's important to determine for you all to be successful is to find some way to tease that out. What happens when people dissent? What happens when people disagree? Who's getting promoted? And if the person who's getting promoted is actually worse than the person that was there before, then sure, they've got a pipeline for leadership, but not one that's supportive.
Yeah. So I'm seeing other clinicians shaking their heads. Yes. So she brought into something. Hello, how are you, Cormac? Anything you want to say about what Rebecca just brought online? Any contribution around knowing the right team?
I think I very much like the team management and what we did before. I was trying to apply it. I think it might have been a big ticket item, and I could have done it in smaller bites, getting people together. They can't see the return on investment. If I can go back to the ownership of the patient, it depends what you're talking about, the financial part or the health outcome, and then who's taking the good outcome and who's taking the bad outcome. What's happened is when people were talking about local leadership or centralizing it, I now have 4 bosses theoretically, and I had one 2 years ago as we become in different service lines and answer to different parts. So it's kind of a challenge to find the ownership thing is really big with me, I think it's getting too hard. But I think, things about psychological safety. So our survey said that psychological safety from the CEO and of Advocate and being part of the decisions about how our work is made, They say they run it through a committee. They ask me, is that okay, Cormac? If I look like I say yes, I said yes, but I didn't say yes. So I think that's one of the things I'm hearing, we've tried to do some, as you know, working with Suzanne and others, we've tried to do some, and we've done some good things, but it's really not enough, despite the fact that the experiences, I'm in a group of late career coaching, and they're just kind of seeing that transition and what the multiple leaders has become, or the uncertainty of whether I will be a leader in the future, and I also have multiple leaders. So those are just a couple of things I was trying to just
They're
listen
good.
in.
Those are really great distinctions for all of us, because there are levels and levels and levels of layers of leaders, right? Levels and levels of leaders, and the layers in that are giving way to who's doing what, but then who's responsible for the patient outcome. And we are
I
seeing.
think
Go ahead. The
so.
extension.
I'd use this.
Extension. Yeah.
I've talked about burnout a lot before, but I think the better term is moral injury is more, because I've said it's not just about cutting down the amount of work, but it's the frustration. I think people are in healthcare. Why do they stay in healthcare if it's so terrible? Because it's addicting. Because when you get the taste of bringing somebody and saving their lives, everybody's looking for that hit, if you like, but it doesn't come like it's just so when you're frustrated, you can't do what it is. I mean, it's just the quality of the work or the purpose. I can't do it. It's not really, I mean, the volume is bad. Don't get me wrong. Nobody should be working 80 hours a week or whatever the too much is.
Yeah, I want to stop you around that because you hit on the core. It's the purpose, right? This is symbolic work, and people
Mhm.
stay in it even when they're burning out, even when they are disengaged in the culture of things. They stay for the impact with the individuals that they have some level of control over in the care of their health. So that is a universal part of the healthcare systems that we see and work in. So. That's an interesting dynamic, Barry. What are you seeing? And Denise, I'll come back to you too, Mitch.
Well, what hit me when he was talking is, and with Rebecca with ROI and her reaction to that is usually when we do a team coaching initiative, we look for some sort of ROI, we look for some sort of outcome. And what Cormac said was, are you looking at for the financial outcome or the patient outcome? And I thought that was kind of interesting of what that discussion would look like within a team of what is the outcome you're really trying to work on, the patient outcome or the financial outcome. So
well,
thanks for
and
that,
the third one then, Barry, that we've seen a long time ago and we've continued to focus on is the return on engagement, the ROE, which we have done, right, in research and volumes of research, is to get the engagement score for where the whole population is, and then by division, and then address that. If it's really low or if it's medium range and you want to improve that, then how do you do it? And what would exact a change in a significant way so that everybody feels the release in the spaces opening up and some lightness in the space. And I think that could be really helpful.
You would think the ROE would impact both the financial outcome and the patient outcome.
Yeah, I think that could be the golden thread, is to continue to focus on that. Denise, your thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to say I see so much opportunity here with all of you that's come to join us on this call. You obviously have, a penchant to looking into team coaching and learning. And I don't know if anybody has sat in a true team coaching event, but if you can think about this, if we just take it up a step higher, just for a moment, and we think about what our lens is when we're thinking of a team. We're one-on-one coaches, right? So you've all been through the program, so you do executive coaching one-on-one. But when you think of a team, think of it as a single voice that you're listening to. So when you put that team together, what is that voice, and what is the outcome of that voice that you can affect, that the team can affect? I think Rebecca brought it up in terms of, just psychological safety, in terms of different levels, whether it's doctors, surgeons, anesthesiologists, nurses. So as a practitioner, if you can think about this lens as a single voice, it may be helpful for you to identify what a team might look like in your organization. And maybe we can all come back together and help formulate what that team coaching event looks like in that team. Team coaching, as Barry and DJ brought up, it's team development. You're really trying to develop a team together that takes ownership in whatever they're doing. And so we do team building, we do mentoring, we do coaching, obviously, and we do training. So what might it look like for that team that you've identified? That's really what's come up for me during this whole conversation.
I'll tell you I love this, Denise, and it's the old, the mamas and the papas when John Phillips said, when we sing together, we sing with one voice. Otherwise, we have unique voices, unique sound. There's Mama Cass over here. For those of you who are too young to know what I'm talking about, I feel sorry for you. But so pulling it back in that team voice, I think that's the piece that I'm seeing in the team that I'm just beginning to unearth the needs around. And it's what is the storyline that bleeds through everything, right? What is that? And a part of it is for them to take the reins from a large organizational initiative that had a major consulting firm running it, to having them step fully into their agency and to be able to speak in executive circles, to do lots of different things that they've not been trained to do. So there's going to be training components involved. There'll be things that they'll bring on in-house from their CHRO and others that are going to be really critical for this. So I think the partnering with the organizations is going to be perhaps even a bigger part of our dialogue, right? Of how do we get stakeholders involved as we enter this space so that there's learning throughout and a storyline through. I love that. Yeah.
DJ?
Yes, cool, man.
I know you never one thing, but I just want to emphasize psychological safety again.
Yeah.
In our survey that we just did across the institution, if you go through the corridors, people are not convinced that it can't be traceable, that they were able to speak their mind. So what I do is I teach brainwaves, EEGs, to people. In the traditional mold, people speak up and they give their opinion, and it's usually one or two or three egos, we'll call, going back and forth, and then the people lower or less of an extrovert stay quiet. So change that around, and I show brainwaves and I give them an audience response. Everybody texts in anonymously and they participate and they love it, but they see that there's all they're up there, but it's not getting the egos in the way. And the way I also applied this, I wasn't trying to do team management, but in our group, say, well, what's important to you? Nobody speaks up, but when you give them a chance and say, these are the 5 things, they're all on the same page. And then the conversation keeps going. So we think, oh, DJ thinks differently than me. Barry thinks differently than me, Janet. But once you realize that actually it's all a common theme, it gets flowing. But I'm just trying to think through, because, I took the team management, how you would engage the people to stay up. I just think it's important, and it's psychological safety. Psychological safety is, I don't feel it's going to come back to you. You can't break it. Even people with high degrees, PhDs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I love that you found a way to get the inclusion without having everybody speak up in a room full of people, right? Students and others, residents. But brilliant. Love that. Thank you for sharing. I'm noticing the time, and Janet Crawford, we haven't given you the mic in all this, and I love your observations when you're watching all of this play out with these amazing people. What do you sense that you now are curious about or that you want to underscore?
Gosh, just, first off, the engagement is noteworthy, right? And the curiosity and the thinking about this. And I'm thinking about size of an organization, right? Because where do you it's like your question around who owns the patient. I think if I was asked that as an administrator, I might be taken back and I might be insulted. Right. So what is the point of paying within a leadership program or within a leadership team or within an organization because team advantages is hard to get I've led many teams, you know this, right? And when they excel, they surprise themselves and they don't realize what's in the gap of where they are and where they could be.
Yeah.
Until they experience it. So that's the conundrum, isn't it? Of what really makes this like a solution that they don't know they're looking for.
Yeah.
Yet could really accelerate not only accelerates engagement and it accelerates results. So that there's a lot that I was thinking about. And matrix organizations maybe that is the cross-functional team's the right team, and maybe it's not a cross-functional team. Maybe it's a team within a department because they're huge that really needs to accelerate their growth, and you get traction in that way. So.
One of the things that you just brought online, probably without saying it, is we've seen for 30 years, over 30 years, victimization, people feeling like they can't. And when we go in with this program, one of the first things we do is to look at where they can take ownership, getting out of and we introduce archetypes to them. So Rebecca, you'll love this part, but it's when we start pulling in this is the voice of the victim. Let's talk about why the victim has a light side and a shadow side and how you dance with that. So we're educating them all along, but in bite-sized pieces, not like we're training a full coaching experience. But those small things really add up to new conversations. And they will often say, we moved from not feeling like we had any agency or had any control to feeling like we had full ownership within the first month or two of this is 4 months with the team and 2 months ahead with the team leader and the interviewing process and all that. So as I'm listening to your reflections, Janet, I think that's probably one thing we need to continue to focus on is that shift from I can't to we can, and what that takes and calling it out, the bravery that it takes to call that out, and the lightness that we need and the sort of masterful coaching skills. So I love that. I'll come back to you, Barry, and to Denise to kind of bring us home with your thoughts and any other question you want to seed or leave these folks with, because I think we do need to come back to this, and perhaps we can get the team that I'm getting ready to coach, perhaps we can get them to have their leaders going to go through the program. So perhaps we can have some real data on how that's going, what they're learning and what's working, and maybe what they would like to see done differently. So learn together.
Well,
Barry?
we had 4 questions prepared and we got to 2 of them. So obviously the discussion was very rich. So I appreciate everybody's participation in that. I do want to share one thing before we finish, and we are going to have a training program coming up in our process. If I can get this to come up here, and is scheduled for beginning in September. And this is our Team Advantage program. This is a proven team coaching process. And there's where it's going to be offered 8 consecutive Tuesdays beginning September 15th. If yourself or anyone would benefit from this, let us know. And we'd be happy to include them in that cohort. So let me know about that.
And you're hearing, so Cormac has been through that program, and what you're hearing is in medicine, what we've seen is those who've gone through it sometimes break it down into chunks and do those. And what we're just looking for better answers because we want to equip you all to have the best program, the best results, the research, and contribute to the growth of coaching in medicine and healthcare. Dennece, what would you say in reflection?
Oh, just really enjoyed the dialogue, having everybody on the call. It was great. I hope we can do this again, actually, and hope to see you in September because that's where we can do it.
Yeah, as we can make this sing. So, for all of you, thank you for participating. Jumana, thank you for calling in on behalf of St. It's Johns Hopkins, right? So, yeah, so all the work that you're doing in Dubai. I love our international community. We are going to have someone from Canada who's actually an Olympian come through this next program. We've got all sorts of amazing people lined up for our next program. And so we look forward to populating this room with those faces and voices soon as well. And we're working on a retreat. Lauren, anything you want to say about that? And Rebecca is on that committee, and Bryant is on that committee. Dr. Jonathan Fisher's on that committee. And if you're wanting to have input into that and where we meet and all that, just raise your hand and Lauren will get back to you. We're going
Yes,
to use our
we're
faculty and our participants for that.
right. It's mainly for our graduates to come together. I don't know if anyone else is like me this summer where you're missing the retreat that we had around this time last year. And so we're taking a pause for this year, but 2027 is the plan. We're looking at locations, dates, and want to make it accessible really for people who want to join. So we're starting to think about it, have a lot of runway to plan, an awesome experience. And again, if you have ideas, let me know, but I think we're already kind of itching for it. So
yeah. All right. Thank you all. Thank you for coming and playing and always contributing to the body of work around coaching and healthcare here and coaching overall. It matters. Your work matters. We adore you. Have a great weekend and we'll see you soon. We will not see you in August for the